Hey everyone, welcome to today's episode. Well, we know there are a lot of heavy things going on in culture, but there are a lot of bright spots too. And today's episode is going to help you understand one. Jonathan Brush from Unbound is joining me today. If you have listened or heard me at all or worked with me in any shape, form, or fashion, you know I'm passionate about education, but not just about education, about innovative education. And we have options, K-12 and in higher ed, popping up like crazy. Well, this is one for higher ed. Sure, there are, we've had interviews on the podcast before about really innovative colleges that are opening. But what about those that are not colleges, just options that take a different direction? Well, today, this program is going to be one of them. Unbound is an option for high school graduates that's very out of the box. It's a 3-year program. There are a lot of different ways to approach it, and we're going to hear all about it today. I think it's an important conversation because when there are a lot of options, we really have to lean in and understand who our child is. They have to understand who they are and where they're going. This program helps them do that. So let's lean in and be informed. Hey, Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me today. I'm thrilled that you're here.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, all the things that are going on culturally and in society, and some of them are not fun to talk about. This is not the case with you. I'm so excited about this conversation and the opportunity that you're going to share with us. But I think it's really important for people to hear your story. I think it gives credibility to everything you're doing, and it'll be something that parents are interested in. So will you tell us a little bit just about you and just your story of how did you land where we're going today?
Absolutely. So I tell people my story is not exciting, but if you're going to listen to the things I talk about, then sometimes it's nice to know that I might have some experience in that area.
Right.
I'm a homeschool graduate, and I tell people that's why I'm so socially awkward. And I was homeschooled back at the time when that was really unusual. And I still, the older I get, the more unusual it seems to me that my mom made that choice. But I had a great experience doing that. So I did the non-traditional, education route. Then I went to college. I was the first homeschool student admitted to my college. When I graduated with a decent GPA, but I graduated a second homeschool student that was admitted, and she graduated with a perfect 4.0. She was also beautiful, so I married her after I graduated. So as far as I was concerned, college turned out to be a smashing success for me. And then I went to work for the college for about 11 years. And 9 of those I spent as the director of admissions for a private selective liberal arts college in Virginia. And so I had this kind of interesting non-traditional education, traditional education. And then I loved the college. I loved my team. I loved the people I worked with and for. But I got to a point where I came home one day and I saw my oldest daughter, and she's about 10. And I thought, I do not want her to go to the school that I'm working for. And I thought, well, first of all, that's a crisis of ethics, right? I can't ask other people to send their students to my school as the director of admissions. But the reason for that was that I had been increasingly concerned about the debt that I saw in higher education. I was increasingly concerned about some of the, I went to a school that had been connected to a church and then had just drifted more and more. And so now they were almost actively working against people of faith. And that was very frustrating. But, another part was I just didn't think it was delivering what people thought it was delivering. Kids were coming to our college to be prepared for professional life and what came afterwards. And the college was like supremely uninterested in preparing them for that. They had different agendas. So I left to join a little non-traditional educational startup. And in 2020, we ended up acquiring that company, and that's Unbound. And so now I get to work with some of the most extraordinary young people on the planet. I get to work with some of the most extraordinary young people on the planet because my team is generally a lot younger than I am because I hired students that used to work for me on my leadership teams. And it has been a really fun and exciting ride. Along the way, we've raised a couple of kids. And so I tell people it's not just academic to me as I watch my own children come through and make some of these decisions. And it's been an unexpected and really blessed and extremely fun process so far. And we'll see what comes next.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about Unbound, but what I love about this is there's so many parents now, I think COVID in all realms of education, every aspect of education, parents started to think a little bit differently, or at least be open to think a little bit differently. Having started a couple of non-traditional schools in the Atlanta area, I understand that a lot of the hurdle for some innovative ideas about learning really is with the parent and the mindset of how we grew up, and this is the way you do it, and it's the way. instead of a way. And what I love, there's some really great innovative opportunities popping up even in small colleges now that are starting. But I love for parents and students to just consider the fact that there's not a way. I mean, there's not the way, there's a way. And there are many ways to launch after high school, and the opportunities are growing. Unbound is one of those. And I'm just blown away with the structure of it and what you're seeing and how you're going about it. So will you talk just a little bit about what is the program, I guess? I hate to call things programs, but what's the process?
Sure.
And then we'll talk about the students and all the things.
Sure. Well, just to pick up the thread of what you were talking about, it's this double-edged sword, right? I mean, on one hand, it's a little frustrating because for a long time as a parent, your mission was pretty cut and dried, right? Raise the children and, help them sort of figure out their vocational needs. And then for a majority of them, sending them to college, if we could figure it out, if we could make the sacrifices, we could do it, would have some outsized returns. And now it's a bit frustrating for a lot of parents to go, well, that's not quite working the way I expected. The flip side of it is there's so many options out there now. There's so many opportunities and there's so much flexibility. Now, it does require a little more sorting through, but the opportunities are so much greater, in my opinion, and especially for parents and students who care. And they don't have to be even particularly talented or smart or all those kinds of things, although that's obviously helpful. But it's just if you're willing to ask some questions, then, people who ask the questions, there's a lot of answers available. And that sort of is background to what we do with Unbound, in the sense that the way Unbound works is that we have this idea that it's helpful. And I'm always careful the way I say this. I don't mean it's required. I don't mean it's morally imperative. I just mean it's helpful to be able to stay connected to places that you grew up. Right? If you're able to remain local, you have connections there, you have family there, you have church connections, neighborhood connections, and all those kinds of things. And so we wanted to create a program that allowed students to we say, remain embedded in their local communities.
That's great.
So that meant that we had to have some sort of, we could leverage this cool technology like we're using right now. And so there's some online component to that. But ironically, we really don't like online school. And the reason for that is I think that in order to build relationships, you have to be in connection with people live. Mm-hmm. And so Unbound has been able, in our flagship program, which we call Send, we've been able to build a program where we can deliver content online, but then 4 times a year, we send our students, plane tickets, and they fly to these events. They're about a week long. They're very intense, and they're designed to really connect students to each other and to challenge and teach them some of those important lessons that we have that we've learned help students thrive. And so the result is you get to have students that remain embedded in their local communities, but then after just a year, have this army of people at their back spread all over the country that they have really deep connections and relationships with. And then because we don't have to do all the traditional school things, we were able to kind of take this blank slate and say, well, what is it the students really need to learn? And let's emphasize that. Suzanne, I was always intrigued when I talked to people about, hey, tell me about what college was for you. And people would never talk about the classes. They'd talk about, well, I learned this and the extracurricular activities or all these kinds of things. And so we get this opportunity to sit down and go like, well, what if we focused on that? I mean, like, what if we taught those?
Yes.
What are they saying the skills are from those things? And let's teach those. And then the final piece was, we said, well, everybody's doing this like GPA thing. I'm not against a GPA and I'm not against grades. It's just that I've found that in my life, I used to work for a retired Marine Corps colonel, which is an oxymoron. They never retire, but they never stopped being Marine Corps colonels. And he would say the A students go into education, the B students go into middle management, and the C students are the ones that the A students and B students work for.
That's exactly right.
And there's something to that, right? And so we wanted to kind of say, well, let's sort of strip some of that away. And so we do something that, and look, the irony here is we thought we invented this term. We didn't, just so you know that it was out there a long ways, but we kind of arrived at this thing called project-based education. And the idea was just that, what if we evaluate you by doing something real? So as much as possible, and you have to do certain things with case studies and hypotheticals and stuff like that. I know that. But at some point, it's like, if you want to learn about business, can we help you start a business? If you want to learn about marketing, you want to come and help our marketing team? If you want to learn about, and so trying to get them into this connection to do things as much as possible, because in a world where technology disrupts and things change so frequently, you almost have to kind of do it live and have that experience of failure and success that ultimately is what teaches you. And so that's just to say that Unbound is a program that allows you to stay embedded in your local community, have a national network of friends and connections, and is based on project-based education. So you're doing real things. And the result is we can get some extraordinary results out of that. And it has been super fun to be able to be a part of that, but it's really fun to see the outcomes for the students.
Okay, I have a question about that. So it's a sort of apprenticeship or the project-based learning, are they doing projects throughout the year, or are they doing projects when they come together those 4 times a year, or both? How does that, just to give a picture of the year itself?
No, that's a great question. And so there's a little bit of both. So we have 4 events. So we kick off with this event in Michigan we call Apex, and it's orientation for our new students. It's graduation for our departing students, and a lot of our alumni come back. So it's homecoming. So it's like 3 times bigger than everything else. So it's a big, I don't want to say it's a big party in the sense that we're not doing anything constructive, but it's a big reunion is a better way to describe that. Then we go to Pennsylvania in the fall in October at a program called Base Camp. And Base Camp is focused on teaching students a lot about resilience, task management, time management, and relationship basics. And we have several tracks for the different students there, so everybody gets new content. But the students are divided into teams, about 8 to 10 students, and they have an Ascend team leader who is an older student or a recently graduated student. And so at Base Camp on one afternoon, all the teams do their own project, and they pick a project to do, and it can be fun or whatever. And that's kind of the first taste, right? And that's important because at Base Camp, they all work together brainstorming and talking about things, because at Ridgeline, which takes place in Florida, and I realize there's some irony with the name in Florida, but we go to Florida because theoretically it's supposed to be warm, and in January. And at Ridgeline, we greenlight the top 10 to 12 projects that students propose at Base Camp. And they have 5 days, 3 full days and 2 half days to complete those projects. And to give you an example of that, last year we had students who went to Florida, bought a car that wasn't working, rebuilt it in the parking lot, fixed it, and gave it away. We had a project where students drove down there and built a sailboat and learned to sail it in 3 days. They created a murder mystery theater where they wrote a script and acted it and then did it in the last day. They created a portable escape room so they could do it with their friends there and then take it and use it as a business in other places. We had a group that wrote a curriculum for Bible study based on the generations writing letters to each other, and they actually presented it to one of the churches in that area. Those kinds of level of projects. And so that's the very intense, like everything's really crushed in really fast. And then Capstone is kind of our final event in Colorado. It's more of a leadership focused event. But then all of that is really training, because our first year students are tasked to be able to complete the program. They have to take an idea from an idea to reality.
Okay.
And they start on that and they work on it the whole year. Second year students have to take somebody else's idea from an idea to reality. And our third year students have to work on a team to take a idea from idea to reality. And so for that process, starting in the fall, they're brainstorming. By the time they finish Base Camp, they're having to put a proposal together. By the time they get through Christmas, that proposal has to be approved by their Ascend team leader, who are way more difficult than we would ever be. and then they start in January to complete that project, and it has to be done by May, when then we have a national showcase and everybody talks about the projects they did. And that's where things get exciting. That's where, kids put on magical balls that a costume ball that raised $55,000 for an anti-human trafficking organization, where they start businesses, where they run a marathon, where they work together to write a script and shoot a trailer. That was the first year project. Then they worked together on somebody else's film for the second year project. And then they came back and shot the film in the third year project. And it's actually being entered in some big time film festivals this year. That's the kind of level of creativity and inventiveness that happens when you have this kind of repetitive training. And I would say pushing, like, hey, is that big enough?
There's a challenge.
So, yeah.
So, and then in the meantime, talk about just the academic part, because so that's online and you're able to get that, but the standard academic, what does that part look like?
Sure. So, and you can see this on our website at beunbound.us. But if you go there, there's a couple of tracks. And so students can choose just a certification, and that's a certification granted by us. And that's for students, particularly in the trades or who are working full time. And they say, I want these other set of skills. I want this project-based education, but I need the most flexibility. And then we have students who do a track with us. And so we have a digital marketing track, an AI track, a videography track, an art and design track, and so a writing track. And so these students are doing specific work. In this case, that work is a bit project-based too, in the sense that they're being taught by people who are not professors. They're actually professionals in that field. They're making their living doing that. So, our art and design track is taught by somebody who makes his living doing art and design. Our writing track is taught by an author who makes her living writing and publishing books. And so that kind of practical hands-on stuff. And then we have a degree track where we can help you earn 90 credits that are guaranteed to transfer into a college that you choose before you start the program. And so obviously we can transform more credits into some of our partner colleges, and we have 7 or 8 of those. But we can custom build it for almost any college, and we'll do that before a student enrolls and then say, yeah, if you want to come here. So I have students who will spend 3 years with us and then spend one final year completing college online or on site somewhere. Or I have students often who will come to me and do a year, earn 30 credits in electives in general education, and then transfer that into an engineering program. My own son is in nursing school, and he did all of his electives and all of his gen ed stuff with us, and then transferred to nursing school the next year, and is now, on his way to getting his RN, and will have most of the stuff knocked out for his BSN. And he's 18, so he's already halfway through nursing school. Has a couple years as an EMT under his belt and has most of his credits done for his BSN. So that's the kind of advantage we can kind of roll forward for somebody.
It's just incredible. What I love about that is for those students that are maybe going into a field like nursing, they want to be a doctor, they want to be an engineer. And, you hear so many parents at this point saying, there is no way I'm going to pay for college. I'm not doing that, and it's that, like, never say never, because if your child's designed for that and that's their passion, there may actually be a need. In the same way that everybody doesn't have to go to college, there are all these options. And so I love the fact that they can be, taking care and learning these life skills and learning how to function and think and all the things that are going to benefit them in life and with a family before they go. And then it's the time on the campus is short, and it's focused, and it's purposeful. And it's not just for the extracurricular and the fun of college. So I think it's just an incredible opportunity. So 3 years, and then if you want that last one, you go one more year, however else long you need to do for your major.
That's correct. And, I can even speak this to my own children. My oldest daughter went through the program, did 90 credits, took the last year, graduated with online through Liberty University, and works for us. And so that worked out really great as far as I was concerned. My son did a couple years with us and then was making so much money as a contractor that he actually came back as a volunteer for as a SN team leader, and started his own contracting business. Didn't need to finish a degree. Actually has the credits close to finishing it, and just decided that it was, he's making more money and having more fun working, doing the contracting business, and did that. My next daughter is actually probably, extremely academically gifted. She earned a bunch of credits, did the program, but she had a really fantastic job, and she's actually really interested in writing. And so she just sort of put that on pause for a little bit. She's focusing on some of her writing and some other projects, and really learning she works for a wealth management firm and has really enjoyed learning that. And then my son is more the traditional route, my next son, where he took a year with us. That was all he really wanted to do there, earned some credits, went in, and now he's on campus at a school doing the nursing program, it's the associate's degree first for the RN, and then he can do the BSN later. But in his case, he's making more money going to school than, some other children are, because the hospital offered him a contract. And so, if he comes work in their ER, they paid for all of his nursing school plus a little stipend, and then he has a guaranteed job when he leaves. So I joke and say, my fourth son's actually doing better than all the rest of us in terms of his future. And I say that for my children, of course, I know them the best, but they are reflective of the kinds of students I've worked with in broad categories. But the part that, Suzanne, that it was interesting to me, I said when I worked for the college, is that the president of that college really was interested in teaching practical skills to students. And he almost got a no confidence vote from the faculty, who were like, I have no interest in teaching practical skills to students. I'm here to teach medieval English. And, and they're tenured. And so there was no way around that. And so the incentives are different. Now, to your point, some people ought to go to college, ought to go to traditional college, and ought to get traditional, liberal arts degrees. And I'm actually a huge fan of that. What I'm not a fan of is students going to college and getting $100,000 in debt and not knowing what they're doing.
That's right.
But what we're able to do at Unbound is say, well, actually, we don't have any of this veneer of we're some sort of ivory tower type thing, which, by the way, I think can be good and is good for society as a whole. But our role is to practically prepare students for their next step. We're the kind of down and dirty, get moving thing. And so one of the things we do, Suzanne, is we say, if you spend 3 years with us, and even if you don't earn a degree, you just earn the certificate, we guarantee you'll get a job that pays more than a college graduate in your area within 6 months of graduating, or we will refund all 3 years of your tuition. And we've never had to refund that. But I'll tell you what, I get up every single morning thinking about my third year students, who we call our want students,
right?
And thinking specifically about exactly what they need. Because, 6 or 7 months from now, I need to be making sure every one of them is employed, or we're going to be financially in a pickle, right? And so that is a deliberate attempt for us to say, as an organization, we got to focus on the outcome. And the outcome is preparing our students to be able to move into their next step in life and have valuable skills to translate. And so, every day we have to think about that. And if we don't, we're going to pay a cost for it. Literally, we're going to pay for it. And that again is that excitement of being able to sort of say, what are we trying to accomplish? Well, let's build our incentives to make sure that we always work on that. So.
I love that when we started non-traditional schools, K-12, and they were hybrid schools, and parents would come, and this was in 2010, 2011, and kind of white knuckled. And if we do something that's not the norm, are our kids gonna live? Are they going to be able to survive? Really nervous about taking a leap into something non-traditional, and inevitably, every mom thought, I don't know if I have what it takes. I'm going to mess my kid up. And she's in tears, but she's knowing she's being pulled. And every the dad question was always, will they be able to get into college? And, will they be able to, is this college prep? And we very boldly said, it is not. It is life prep. Life prep, college ready. If you are prepared for life, you will be ready for college. It's not necessarily, if you are prepared for college, you are not necessarily ready for life. And so I love even the fact that you're saying, someone on a campus, a president of a college, or someone high up in college who's saying, we want these children to understand, and children, young adults, to understand and have the skills that they need to navigate life, not just learn things that they're interested in. Both are important. But the greater thing is, can our children navigate the world that they live in? And to your point, things are moving so quickly. It really is, when you do a resume now, it's really about what skills do I bring to the table, not what degree, because half the jobs aren't going to be even relevant in 5 years. And so teaching them how to be able to respond and get in and apply the skills that they have to wherever they are and whatever they're doing is so critical. It's a different way to think about things.
Well, and I think there's always, so in some ways you have to work a little harder, but in other ways the advantages are tremendous. I mean, I joke with my own children, and sometimes with our Unbound students, I say, you guys are going to do great. You're going to do fantastic. And not because you're particularly special, but because your competition's horrible. And so, and it's a little tongue in cheek, but it's actually true in my experience. Things that you and I would have taken for granted, and some of the generations would have taken for granted. And this is not, and I'm always quick to say, like, Gen Z, don't, I'm not busting on you. I'm just saying that every generation had their unique challenges. And this is the particular way that your unique challenges comes in for your generation, which is a lot of your peers don't have the basic skills that are absolutely going to be necessary, that they came through institutional, education systems that didn't prepare them for that. They've become addicted to social media. They have some, unreality problems. And so, things like hard work, how to create value, how to show up, how to talk to somebody, look them in the eye, how to have a conversation. And so as a parent, if you're willing to invest some time and energy into doing that yourself and to putting them in programs that help them do that, we're talking about tremendous outsized gains. We have another business called Valley Park Farm Market, and we have a restaurant and a coffee shop and a store and all these kinds of things. And the difference between, and we hire a lot of Unbound students, clearly, the difference between Unbound students and other students is just jaw-dropping. And I have great students across the board. Our staff is fantastic. There's not a single kid that works for us that I don't like. But the students that come to me from other educational systems, the coffee rush will end and they'll kind of lean against this counter and they'll pull out their phones. And the Unbound students, the coffee rush will end and they'll grab a broom and they'll grab a paper towel and they'll clean the windows and they'll rearrange, they'll sweep off this counter. I mean, like, they're just constantly, or they'll come to us and say, hey, I saw that we're doing this and somebody asked for this. What if we ordered these things? Like they're constantly looking to create value. Well, I'll promote anybody who helps the business grow, but I'll tell you who I promote disproportionate amount of time are those ones who are constantly looking. And so, now, will that translate to other places? Yeah, there's not a company on the face of the planet that doesn't want people to do that. And it doesn't matter what you're doing. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I used to say to my kids, because having been in the high school classroom for 10 years and sort of watching just how students were responding in year one that I was in there, responding to an adult and to authority, versus year 10, and how students were responding to an adult or authority. I'm watching what is happening. And I think, I would say to my own kids, I'd tell all the students, but I'd say to my own kids, really, the bar is not that high. If you can shake hands, make eye contact, speak with an adult, ask some questions, Really, there are so many kids that have a difficult time even speaking to another adult, and a lot of it's because of screens. I was asked to be a part of something, or to consider being a part of some, I don't know, it was some conference for teenage kids that were about to launch into college at one point. And I was saying, well, tell me a little bit about the organization before I get behind it, or, want to be a part of it or whatever. And it was really preparing kids right at the end, going into their senior year, for what they were going to need to go into college. And so they had their list, and they thought, this organization, which I thought was a great idea, they said, we're going to ask the kids what they need instead of just giving, like we have our idea of what we know they're going to need that they don't know, but we're going to ask them. The number one question that they got, the response that they got from the kids that were going to go into the program, was how to speak to another adult. They were asking, like, teach us how to make eye contact and speak to an adult. It was a plead, but for me, I'm like, that is a cry for help in
Yes.
in the world, that in any world, in any society. And so I completely agree. Those basic skills that we assume are happening now. I think a lot of times, parents and adults that did not grow up with their face on a screen assume that these are just naturally translating, and they're not, because they've had a wall between them. And so just getting them out to think and to be with others and to collaborate with others, there's such a high value in that, because it can't be assumed at this point.
Well, there's it's football season, right? And so if you can look at, and how many times you see this played out, where, you've got a great coach who has fantastic schemes and all these really important new blitz packages and offensive packages and all that stuff. And then, they're losing games because their players are fumbling, or they're dropping passes, or they're throwing, and it's like, well, you have to go back to the basics. This is how, and that there's like a constant mantra in sports for that. Well, that's true in life as well, right? I mean, so it's like, yes, there's phenomenal opportunities out there. The internet, now AI, is opening up tremendous opportunities, and of course challenges. But you can do things, and you can see this by, students come to us and their biggest question is they want to find their purpose. Well, there's a whole different conversation we can have there. But what a luxury! I mean, like, for most generations have ever lived, finding my purpose was easy. I need to be fed tomorrow, and I need to live in a safe place, right? And so to have that being the number one thing that everybody's working about, that's an incredible, fantastic, phenomenal, unspeakable blessing. Like, I mean, it's hard to grasp, right? And so you have that, and yet you have people that don't know the basics. And so, but again, it's like, there's an opportunity there. So if you learn the basics, if you know how to not fumble, if you know how to catch, if you know how to tackle, you know how to wrap up, for the football analogy, but if you know how to talk to people, if you know how to show up on time, if you know how to do hard work, and if you know how to ask good questions like, hey boss, what is it we're trying to accomplish here? We live in a world where, for a long time, the way you figured out work was you did exactly what your boss wanted. And we have a whole school system that's designed to teach people to do what the professor or teacher wants. And the problem is, in the reality out there, AI and technology disrupts things so much, the boss frequently doesn't know what I want. I mean, like, so I can just say that for myself, right? What I want people to know about Unbound. Well, how do you want to do that? Well, I think we have to do it through social media. What's social media? I don't know. I have a hard time keeping track of how many social media is out there. And I'm not sure Instagram changes the way they do things every 6 weeks.
Yes.
And so I'm like, so when you come to work for me, the value you bring is if you say, what is it you want? Oh, you want to raise awareness of Unbound through social media. Okay, I got that. Okay. And now I'm going to go and say, and I'm going to come back with a proposal. Hey, I think we should really be on this platform, and we should do this. We should shoot more shorts, or we should do these kinds of things. All right, great. Because I didn't know, because that just changed. When I got into marketing, direct mail was king. Right. And so it's that kind of shift. And so basic stuff. Do you have good connections? Do you have, in terms of being able to talk to somebody and carry a conversation? Because if you have that, and you can ask the value that the company needs, and then you can use your good communication skills to say, I think we should try this. All right, now all of a sudden you've set yourself apart from everybody else. And so there's an opportunity there, right? And there's an opportunity to serve and help others by being an example of doing that as well, so they can go, oh, that's how it works.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about retention with your students. What are you hearing from them? What's the feedback from them? How long have you been doing this particular program again?
This particular program, and Ascend, we started in 2020. So this will be our 5th year. And so that means we've had, 2 classes that have graduated the whole way through from 3 years. But I actually designed the program so that you can jump off at every year.
That's great.
And I do that because, for example, my son, needed 1 year with us and then when I was in nursing school, and I didn't want those students to think they'd failed. So I tell them, yeah, you're just as much of an alumni. We grant a certificate for every year, and then we grant our full certificate for the 3-year program. So retention for us has been double what we expected year to year. In other words, students have been more interested in staying in the program. But what's really fun for me is that the retention mark that I think is most important in our program is, if you start with us, do you finish with us at the end of the year? Because typically students who finish even 1 year, whatever they do next, say, hey, this really helped launch me. And our retention rate is actually, last year was better than Harvard. But it averages in the not high 90%. Last year was like 98 or 99%. And that gets a little squirrely depending on how many students you've got in the program, right? But basically that means that I lose 1 or 2 students typically from the beginning of the program to the rest of the year. And some of that is culture. One of the ways that we try to tell our students this is an elite group is we say, if you join the SEALs, it's elite because only 30% get out the other side. If you join us, it's elite because I will compromise the program for nobody. Everybody's going to have to do all this stuff. But my perception of the quality of your class will be if everybody gets through. So we're not going to make any exceptions. And so that means the teams get really serious about, no, we'll help you. What, do you need some help studying? Do you need some help? Do you need some advice in your project? Do you need some help in labor in your project? We'll help you. We'll give you a hand. And so there's a cool cultural momentum then that says, hey, once we start, if you make it from Apex to base camp, which is where it's like, hey, is this program good for you or not? By the time you get to base camp, those teams have locked arms and say, we are going to be walking across the stage together as a team at Apex next year. So.
Just so much value in that alone. Just so much value in character.
Well, the relational capital is so exciting.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so great. One more just quick question about the program. About how many students? I know it's a smaller program, and I think, that's powerful. That's true discipleship. But what does it look like in terms of numbers or hoped numbers or that piece of it?
Sure. So that's a great question. So we have about 100 students in the program now. And to be perfectly honest, it would make my life so much less stressful if we had about 120 to 150 students in the program. So we'll definitely be growing to that size. And then I think there's an interesting problem here where it's like in almost any enrollment driven thing, and you work with some schools.
Yeah.
There's a treadmill that's hard to get off of, right? You have to keep growing, and then you have to expand, then you have to grow, and you have to expand. And so I've seen that at colleges. And so I don't know exactly what our top size is, but it's not 10,000, right? I mean, it's something that has 3 numbers in it. I suspect it's like 150 or 200. But our limiting factors is everybody who works for us has to teach something. And so that means that everybody in the program, all of our staff has to have some connection to students. And we do that deliberately. And then the other thing that we do is that we run a high school program. So high school program is primarily for homeschool students. It is project-based, and it teaches these life skills. It's 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. And the cool thing about the high school program is that because it's delivered online, it can scale almost to an unlimited degree. And that allows us to be in a situation where we can grow Ascend to sort of a manageable size, and then we're not forced economically to grow it bigger. So my goal is to have a program that is small enough that we get to know all of our students. We can do that kind of personal connection, but big enough that we have an impact. Because honestly, my big goal is to train special forces for local communities. Now, I want my students to be better at local community life, local church life, local neighborhood life, like a Navy SEAL is better at Navy life. And so, obviously, the more volume you have there, the better. But at some level, the SEALs can't be the SEALs if they're the Navy. There has to be a subset. So.
That's great. Well, I'm so excited about this. I think just to wrap up, I would love, is there anything on your heart that you would speak to a parent who might be hearing this and thinking like, oh, that sounds great. I'm not sure. I don't know if my child will be open to this. Like, what sort of an encouragement do you have if they're starting to sort of feel like, oh, I think I might be being called to do something that looks a little bit different?
Yeah. So 2 things. When it comes to Unbound, I would say, I don't want to have any part of taking any of your hard-earned dollars for anything unless we have thoroughly and completely explained ourselves and that you're convinced this is a good match for you. And it's on us to provide that. We're asking you to do something risky. So that's why we guarantee if you spend 3 years with us, you can get a job, because we know you're taking a risk. But also it means that I can't have a sales team. I have an admissions team. And the admissions team job is to say, what is it you want to do? Let me explain to you how we do that. And if we can convince you that, like, first of all, we know that what you want to do, we can help with. If we can't help with it, we'll send you someplace else, right? But then if we know that we can, then our job, it's our responsibility to make you feel comfortable. Like, I understand how that works, and I believe that makes sense. And look, if we can't do that, you should never pay us,
It's
right?
not
Like
fair.
that's on us to explain. The second part is broader. And that is, oh, the world's changing so fast. There's all these different things. And what do I do? Look, this is not about having special knowledge about Unbound or anything else. This is not about being the perfect parent. This is not about having all the answers. This is just about are you willing to stop and say, oh, let me ask that question. Is this where we need to go? Mm-hmm. And you might ask the question and say, yes, my child got admitted to, needs to go to, and will be a great match for a traditional college. That's fantastic. And if you've actually taken the time to ask that question and answered it honestly, I would submit to you that your child is going to do absolutely phenomenally well. But you might come to that same conclusion and go, this is not going to be a good fit. Well, the good news is there's all these new opportunities. Unbound's one of them, and I think a really good one, but I happen to be a bit biased. And so there's all these opportunities out there, and they're there and they're findable if you're just willing to stop and ask the question. So you don't have to be perfect at this. You just have to go, is this the thing that's going to make the most sense? And then, you're going to start to find the answers. And, if you can teach your child to do that as well, you're going to definitely be above average. And I don't think being above average is about a competition beating everybody else. I think being above average is an opportunity to serve everybody else. And I think you're going to have an opportunity to do that.
Awesome. I'm so excited about this. I hope you're flooded and you get to 150 just because this podcast goes out.
I would be delighted with that.
Such a phenomenal opportunity, and the outcome, and just the fact that you're willing to, schools and private organizations, private schools. I mean, they cling to the contract. Like if I'm going to hire to the contract, nobody gives their money back. In fact, if you quit, we've got to cling to the money anyway. And so the fact that you're willing to put that behind what you're doing, for most people, you might not even know how significant that is because you haven't been in the private school world or private program. It's powerful. And so it speaks a lot to what's happening. And I bless it. I'm so excited for you and for what's happening for the students that get to attend. So thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me and for all that you do. I mean, having voices like yours that are willing to help parents think through things and see things and offer them perspectives and give me a chance to talk and share what we do, that's an incredible blessing. It's certainly a huge blessing to us. I suspect it's an even bigger blessing to your audience. And so thank you very much. I'm honored and really appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Hey, parents, I hope that was encouraging to you. I love the innovation. I love his heart. I love the fact that he had experience with a background in college and working with professors. I thought one of the most profound things was that he said the professors don't really even know what they want. They're not wanting to teach necessarily life skills. And that's what our kids need. And so I think there's this incredible opportunity with this program. I love the fact that there are 3 different options. But for those who know that they're going to college, and we're really about that there's an opportunity to do that, but the life skills that they're going to learn, learning how to collaborate. We've heard that on a couple of other episodes, that our kids are having a hard time knowing how to collaborate and really make connections. And that helps to build identity and belonging and all those core needs. These kids are not just coming out stronger because they're doing project-based learning. They're coming out stronger because they're learning how to be in relationship. It's powerful. And so I hope that this just sort of opens your eyes and maybe your mind to some of the options. It is just one of them. There are millions of options right now opening up in K-12 and in higher education. And so as you explore, I would just encourage you, be curious. Think well about it. That's what Think is about. Let's be curious about what the options are. Listen to our students, know who your kids are and what their bent is, and then help them think well about what the next step is, because there are a lot of them. And overall, I hope that this episode helps you parent with purpose, disciple with direction, and leave an intentional legacy.